Vanakkam, good evening, and welcome to the December month's talk, Heritage Talk organized by Tamil Heritage Trust. Before we start today's program, I would like to give a brief introduction of Tamil Heritage Trust and its activities, and also introduce today's speaker and the topic. Tamil Heritage Trust is a volunteer-driven, not-for-profit organization established in 2010. The primary objective of Tamil Heritage Trust is to enhance the understanding, appreciation, dissemination, and celebration of India's rich cultural heritage. Towards this, we conduct multiple programs and workshops. Our monthly heritage talks, like this one, is a platform where both experts and enthusiasts alike come together and give a talk on various aspects of Indian heritage, be it literature, temple architecture, music, dance, personality, languages, and so on. We also conduct what is called a Pecha Kacheri, which is a 2-day intense seminar that is organized in the month of December. This is unlike our monthly lectures that tend to be on various topics. Our Pecha Kacheri every year is themed around a central topic. In fact, after 2 years of we did a Pecha Kacheri in 2021, but that was which happened this year in January. That was an online, but after 2 years of not being able to do an in-person Pecha Kacheri, we are going to be starting our Pecha Kacheri season for 2022 very soon. It is on December 17th and 18th. This is going to be happening in person at the Tamil Virtual Academy in Koturpuram, Chennai. The theme for this year's Pecha Kacheri is Vijayanagara, a city, a dynasty, an empire. So it is going to be 2 days, 10 lectures about various facets of the Vijayanagara empire, the rulers, the art, the architecture, and various aspects of the Vijayanagara empire. You will be seeing more details of this year's Pecha Kacheri on our website and also on our Facebook page. We also conduct an Indology festival. We have conducted 2 editions of the Indology festival in 2020 and 2022, where we bring together experts, not just from India, but from around the world, to share their knowledge on various aspects relating to Indology. Our most recent Indology festival was on the temple builders of medieval India from 8th to 13th century CE. All our programs, our talks are available on our YouTube channel, Tamil Heritage Trust. So if you have not done yet, please go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you will be able to receive notification of our future events. We also conduct intense workshops for the general public. We conduct workshop on Pallava Grantham, temple appreciation, music, museum appreciation, and so on. Every year in the month of January, we conduct a site seminar, which is a heritage study tour, where we select a heritage site within India and then travel there during the month of January. But 3 or 4 months before the tour, we also spend some time together in trying to prepare for the site seminar, doing PowerPoint presentations among ourselves, and going there as a well-informed group of participants. Our program called Alamar Avai, where we work with the teachers of various schools in Tamil Nadu, and we help them become ambassadors of heritage within the schools and help disseminate heritage, India's cultural heritage within their schools and to their school students. We also hosted the V. Venkaya Epigraphy Award, which we started this year. It was meant to recognize an individual who has made exceptional contribution in the area of epigraphy. The award was instituted by Srimati Sunita Madhavan, and Tamil Heritage Trust co-hosted that award with Mrs. Sunita Madhavan. Every year, we also institute the Professor S. Swaminathan Heritage Award, which is meant to recognize individuals who made extraordinary contributions towards understanding, dissemination, and preservation of Indian heritage. We've been instituting this award since 2020. You can see pictures of all our previous award winners. To know more about us, if you want to be part of our mailing list, please, all you need to do is send an email to us, admin@tamilheritage.in, and you will be able to receive notifications of all our programs and all our other initiatives. With that brief introduction, I would like to introduce today's topic and our speaker. Today's topic is the importance of Prakrit in literature and religion. Prakrit was a group of Indo-Aryan languages. Prakrit is important to understand the history of Indian languages. It was spoken between 500 BC to 500 AD. It is the base to learn ancient Indian philosophies. Understanding of Sanskrit language is incomplete unless we learn Prakrit. Preaching of the Buddha and Mahaveera were in Prakrit. So a very fascinating topic, and we are fortunate to have Dr. Abhijeet Alagoudar with us, who is going to be giving us a talk on this topic. Dr. Abhijeet is a member of faculty in the Department of Studies in Jainology and Prakrits from the University of Mysore. He had his BA in Sanskrit, MA in Prakrit, and a PhD from the University of Mysore. He has authored 4 books on various features and teachings of Jainism, edited and translated 2 books, including the Jainendra Siddhanta Kosha, which is a dictionary for Jaina technical terms. He is a manuscript reader for the Indira Gandhi National Center for Arts in New Delhi. He is a member of the Kannada Sahitya Parishad, Bangalore, and the Dravidian Linguists Association in Trivandrum. He's been invited to teach Jaina philosophy by various institutions and has participated and presented papers in several international seminars. With this brief introduction, I'd like to welcome Dr. Abhijeet to come forward and deliver his talk.
Hello. Everyone can hear me, I hope.
Can you raise your voice a little bit more?
Okay.
Or take the mic closer, if that would help.
Yeah, I'll see. Is it okay now?
Yeah, that's
okay. Fine. So yeah, good evening. Namaste to everyone. This is about Prakrit languages and literature. So without any further introduction or further talking about any introduction.
So, Abhijeet, if you could
take
the mic closer to the top, maybe it will help. Because it slowly trails off, the voice falls down.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay, fine. So, good evening to everyone. So, today I'm here to share some of, knowledge, what I know about Prakrit languages and the literature. We will discuss in 2 parts. One is Prakrit languages and another one is the Prakrit literature. As you all know, Prakrit is not a single language. It is a group of languages spoken in the entire India, or precisely we can say the Bharatvarsha, mean to Sri Lanka and Pakistan, Bangladesh and the entire area which earlier was called as Bharatvarsha. So different dialects were spoken in India and those were called as Prakrits, So language is a medium or vehicle of thoughts, and a full-fledged language is said to date from Agilian culture, which is assigned to approx 1500 BC to 800 BC, 8000 BC, 15,000 to 8,000 BC. So earlier, Prakrit language and the history of Prakrit languages were described, and it was categorized by the Aryan invasion. But according to the modern historians and the history, what we know currently, that Aryan invasion, history of Aryan invasion is not actually correct. So a new study has, actually debunked the Aryan invasion theory. So actually there is a need to, rewrite the history of Prakrit languages again, because the entire history of Prakrit languages and literature been, described in a way that Aryan invasion happened in a particular time. So now we will leave the theory of Aryan invasion and we'll discuss a little bit. But there are two important languages in India that we know as Sanskrit and Prakrits. The Sanskrit is a very modern form. Earlier it was called as Vedic Sanskrit or Vedic language. It is very interesting to note that Panini called the language of Vedic text as Chandasa. Nowhere in his great grammatic work he does mention the term Sanskrit, which is used to have come into currency by the time of the Ramayana. So nor does he mention the term Prakrit anywhere in it. So the theory that from Vedic descended classic Sanskrit and from classical Sanskrit descended Prakrit is held to be very unscientific. Because several linguistic features of the Vedic language are nearer to those of Prakrit languages than to the corresponding ones of Sanskrit. And a number of Prakritisms are surprisingly found in the Vedic literature itself. Many words which are there in Vedic are very nearer to, those words there in Prakrits. Mainly the which we call Deshaja Shabda. Deshaja means which are very regional words, derived from the culture of that particular region. So many scholars rightly hold that the oldest language which was considered sacred gave a model, but not the birth to later, classical Sanskrit. Because it was given a model, but not it has given the birth to the classical Sanskrit. Similarly, Sanskrit cannot be the basis of Prakrit as it is stated by some grammarians and scholars. Hence, Prakrit can be interpreted as the natural language of the masses, and Sanskrit as the refined or cultivated language of the allied people, Shishta Varga. So, leaving aside all the elaborate discussions happened in the eminent scholars in India, we can concentrate on the Dr. P.L. Vaidya, approximate 300 to 3 decades ago. He has stated some very important things about Prakrit. That I'll quote him just a minute. Yeah. So P.L. Vaidya said that Prakrit is the oldest and natural language of Indian people, spoken by all from their childhood, out of which Sanskrit, the polished language of the cultured classes, has developed. Some of you may feel that this is a startling statement made to magnify the importance of Prakrit language. But no, far from it, there are evidences available to prove my statement. And they are from the oldest and most reliable works in Sanskrit itself. If you take the Mahabhashya of Patanjali, you find the words like Gona or Goni, Goni, Gona, Goni, which mean cow. These are mentioned by Patanjali, who is the great grammarian and champion of Sanskrit, who asked his listeners not to make use of these words as they are apabrishta, degraded, and as such unfit to be by cultured classed at least on sacred occasions like the performance of yajna and all. But words like Gona, Goni, were so popular and current among the people that completely banning their use became impossible to grammarians. And so they made it a rule recorded by Patanjali himself or by his immediate predecessors that one must not use such words at least on sacred occasions. Yajna karmani napabrashta vani. So later, classicists like Bhartruhari went a bit further and, enunciated a theory that Prakrit words, so numerous and current among the vast population, are incapable of carrying any meaning by themselves, but they do have a meaning through the medium of Sanskrit only. To make the point clearer, they mean to say that words like Gona, Goni do not convey to the listener to the meaning of a cow or bull directly, but only through the medium of Sanskrit. Their equation is thus Gona, Gau. I do not think it requires any elaboration to prove that the natural language of the people of the Bharatavarsha at least was Prakrit, out of which the polished language Sanskrit has developed. All this means that when the Vedas were composed by the priestly class, they were also spoken at home and owing to social stra and tribal groups, etc. Popular dialects or Prakrit dialects current among the masses. Later, classical Sanskrit assumed the status of Vedic, and Prakrits continued their further journey until when Mahavira and Buddha picked up an outstanding regional dialect for preaching their religious tenets and moral principles to the larger audience. This was an important event in the cultural history of India because a spoken dialect got for the first time the status of being the medium of religious and ethical preachings and teachings, and hence had the change of being cultivated, and the outcome was the appearance of the great Pali and Ardhamagdi canons and pro-canons of Digambaras. But before the appearance of these canons, Emperor Ashoka had already addressed his subjects in Prakrit through his well-known rock edicts inscribed in the Brahmi script. Those were found in different parts of India, even in Mansehra, Sahajgadi, Shahbazgadi in Pakistan now it is. So this Prakrit also got literary status, gradually had its literary dialects, and thus stood in rank with Sanskrit, while the spoken dialects followed on with the life of the masses. As days passed on, the difference between the literary Prakrits and the spoken dialects widened. This is the process of developing languages. So by the 5th century AD, both Sanskrit and Prakrit had almost the same stereotype literary from, and once form, and once again an attempt was made to raise the spoken dialect to a literary status, as a result of which Apabhransha came up as a literary dialect. And we all know at about 11th century AD, the same phenomenon of 5th century AD got itself repeated, only to give rise to the new Indian regional literary languages like Hindi, Gujarati, Marathi, and all. Thus, we see that as the stream of unfettered spoken dialects flowed on, there formed some literary islands and were left for posterity. So the literary language to the formation of a, we can, I forgot his name. Vendries, I hope. He has, given an example. He compares the literary language to the formation of a film of ice on the surface of a river, and then remarks, the ice borrows its substance from the river. It is indeed the actual water of the river itself, and that it is not the river. Therefore, we can call the various literary works in Vedic, in classical Sanskrit, in Prakrit, and in the modern Indian languages as literary islands formed and left by the stream of spoken dialects or the permanent patches of film of ice on it. An approximate and compact chronological sketch with no watertight compartments whatsoever. We can mainly see these literary languages of India, like you see there is a Vedic or classical Sanskrit, then Prakrits, then Apabhransha, and then modern Indian languages. That is Hindi, Gujarati, Marathi. But it is not the same case with the so-called South Indian languages like Tamil, Kannada. These languages were there, before 11th century AD. But you can see the impressions of Prakrits in these languages too. There is a need of a vast research on this area, like what were the impressions of Prakrits on the regional languages of South India mainly. So we see that Indian languages, had a continuous and a long history of life, about 3,500 years. Nowhere else can we see this unbroken existence of a stream of languages, represented in the literature of its people from such a antiquity up to the present day. And in this sense, India is a unique in the history of Indian languages, is a unique in the history of any language group in the world. And in this long history, the Prakrits have played an important role by contributing their own significant importance to the cultural life of India, which, fact is found reflected in their literature that is vast and varied, covering a considerably lengthy period of about some around 1800 years, from the days of Mahavira and Buddha until the at least 11th century AD. So you see, there are two opinions. The first one is that the Prakrits were developed from the Sanskrit. Some grammarians, Prakrit grammarians, also have, described in the same way. But meaningly, like Hemachandra said, Prakritihi Sanskritam. So Prakritihi Sanskritam. What does it mean? Like Prakrit languages, the nature of Prakrit languages derived from the Sanskrit. But it was said because the the grammatical model, the grammatical format of Prakrit language was not available at the time when grammarians were about to write a grammar for Prakrit languages. So they had to take the help of pre-existed model of Sanskrit grammar. And they have did the same thing. They have taken the help of the model of Sanskrit language, the grammatical model of Sanskrit language, and then they have described or they have made a Prakrit grammar. But that doesn't mean that it is descended from the Sanskrit. You see, there is a huge gap. If you see the entire inscriptional literature, then you see until 1st century, there is no inscription found in Sanskrit language. But whereas you see at the time of Ashoka has, more than 30 inscriptions he has, written, and they were all in Prakrits. Whether it is called Magadhi, Ardha Magadhi or Pali, but it is in Prakrits. And it was, there in the entire Bharatvarsha. Even in Sri Lanka and Unani, it was, dual translated. So it means the Prakrits were there from the beginning of the literary languages were developed. But the thing is, we all know that how language has been developed. It is a continuous flow. One is a dialect, one is a speaking language, spoken language. And from the spoken language, we refine the spoken language and then we make a literary language. That is the natural process. But we never ever refine already a refined language, or we never ever degrade a refined language and create a new language. How is it possible? Because the language, if it is already refined, why anybody would degrade it? Actually, if a non-literate person degrade the language, still he has to further first know, to understand, to learn that language, and then he would be able to degrade it. So this theory is totally unscientific. So thus, after having a brief acquaintance of Prakrit languages and their literary evolution, let us have a bird's eye on the outstanding Prakrit literature and try to assess its contribution to the culture of this our nation. Because as I told you all people, I prefer to be a interactive session so that people, audience can have their questions, and then that is the better way to understand actually, rather than I go on telling my knowledge to you. So just I'll conclude with the importance of the Prakrit literature, the contribution it has made very briefly, and then we'll have some interactions. So the inscriptions of Emperor Ashoka that belongs to around 300 BC are the earliest available Prakrit records which deserve to be classed as literature, because we need to consider inscriptions as literature. Moreover, these inscriptions as are the first authentic documents marked and dated with the relative precision in the whole range of Indian history. So they are more than 30 and are incised on rocks, pillars, and walls of caves. The 14 rock edicts found in 7 recensions are simple but forceful, and they, the great monarch's appealing voice. They depict the picture of the state and also reflect the monarch's great personality that championed the cause of ahimsa and peace and yearned for the welfare of the subjects. Some after the Ashokan inscriptions, we need to mention the most important inscription, Prakrit inscriptions, that belongs to Samrat Kharvela, that called Hathi Gumpha inscriptions, because there is a elephant engraved in the front of that inscription, that cave, that belongs to Samrat Kharvel. So Kharvela belongs to maybe approx 150 BC. So for their informative value and literary quality, it is striking to note that inscriptions in India are all in Prakrit from 300 BC to maybe 1st century AD. And during this period, Sanskrit was eclipsed by Prakrit, to which fact stand as the first witness the Ashokan inscriptions, clearly indicating that the official language of then Magadha Empire was Prakrit. After inscriptions, we enter the enter to canonical literature, which can be said to comprise Ardhamagadi literature and the Shaurseni, that is Shvetambara and Digambara literature. The Ardhamagadi canon consists of around 45 books composed in different periods. The text like the Acharanga, Sutrakritanga, that all. So maybe the knowledge belongs to far, ancient, from the Mahaveera, maybe 400 BC. And as it is available right now, currently, was finally redacted and put to writing in around 450 AD. So the subjects covered by these texts are, like an encyclopedia. It has religion, it has philosophy, it has metaphysics, it has logic, it has, ethical teachings, moral teachings, tales, cosmography, historical things, historical legends, everything it is there, So the pro-canon of the Digambas is generally divided into 4 parts, that is, called as Anuyogas. So the Digambara canons more concentrate on the principal part. So the entire Jaina philosophical parts may be, covered by the Digambara canons. The value of all these canonical works of the two sects lies in the fact that they laid down for the masses higher values of life, like ahimsa and other ethical principles, which influence the that time the contemporary and later life of the Indian people, in respect of peaceful attitude, respect for others' views, vegetarianism and all, the basic principles. Some scholars think that the roots of the modern political doctrine of non-violence goes back to such teachings preserved in and handed over through these canonical works. So a huge mass of now after these scriptures of Digambara and Shvetambara canons, then we see a huge mass of commentorial literature in Prakrit has grown around the Ardhamagadi canon and also in the Digambara Shaurseni canons. So those were called as Niruktis, Bhashyas, Churnis, other exegetical works from which arose vast and varied types of narrative literature. Biographies of religious celebrities, legendary tales of didactic motifs, illustrative fables, parables, popular romances, fairy tales, kathanakas, kathakosh, the dictionaries of tales and etc. So it may be noted in this context that the Prakrit languages replaced logical arguments by interesting fables, parables, and other tales of illustrating religious doctrines and ethical principles more effectively, and hence they could contribute their own to the field of fables, parables, and other facets of story literature. It is noted that the Prakrit fable literature was the precursor to the Panchatantra, which has made a notable contribution to the world literature. It is also an established fact that Prakrit literature, Prakrit narrative literature has considerably influenced the modern Indian literature. So, while moving in the field of Prakrit narrative literature, we can, we cannot ignore the great Brihat Katha Kosh written by the Gunadhya in Paishachi Prakrit, which is a loss beyond recovery. But three Sanskrit epitomes of which have been come down to us. Being of secular nature, it stands in rank with the Ramayana and the Mahabharata on the national level. In the sense that if the two great epics influence the bulk of the literary output of India by their religious concepts of dharma and moksha and all, the Brihat Katha introduced a pure romantic concept in Indian literature. As a whole, both oral and written, a number of folk tales, some of which are found still in the oral traditions of modern Indian languages, have their ultimate sources in the Brihat Katha. So several interesting Sanskrit dramas like the Mruchakatikam and the Swapnavasodattam and their romantic episodes are based on the legendary tales in it. Its high popularity led it to its different versions, as found now in Sanskrit, Prakrit, in Tamil, Durvinita, who is said to have translated it into Sanskrit, might have most probably given its Kannada version too. So I have noted an amusing subtale, that is Sandame. In story number 1 of the Kannada Vaddaradhane, it is a Kannada text that may be upon the Brihat Katha Kosh to have had its source in this great tale. So this subtale in the Vaddaradhane is like a folk tale, and numerous such tales are found to have been current in modern Indian literature, written and oral both. So the secular lyric is another alluring sphere of Prakrit literature. Okay. Except the two Samvada hymns in the 10th book of the Rig Veda and a quoted life in Patanjali's Mahabhashya, we hardly find anything like love lyric in Sanskrit literature. Neither the culture of the age nor its social environment was favorable to the development of pure love poetry in the Orthodox literature, which was dominated mainly by a serious and didactic motive. But in folk literature, the tradition of which is nicely preserved in Prakrits. The sentiment of love must have been nourished with zeal. It is because of this fact that a large number of such lyric songs in Prakrit had already grown, some 3 centuries before Kalidasa, and anthology of them, compiled and edited by the king Hala, has come down to us in the form of the Satsai, we call, that is Gatha Saptashati, Satsai we call it in Prakrit. So these little songs of love and life have considerably influenced the later Indian literature, include that of bhakti, divine longing for union with the God. Peculiarly of these lyric songs is their realistic touch and closeness to the family and social life of the ancient and medieval rural India. If you see the actual actual culture of India, because these have mentioned about many cultural aspects, what we call nowadays that a modern system or modern civilization, but it was, most of the things were there at that time, because the Gaha Satsai types of works mentioned it, about the sports, Nada, Nattaga, Nada mane acrobat, Nattaga, the Nartaka, the dancer, Vadappa, Boksara, like a joker, Pavaga, Kahaga. Kahaga means a storyteller, reciter. Lasaga, that there is a type of pole dancer, like a bamboo pole dancer, painter, singer, everything is mentioned there very naturally. It is not polished, because those were not meant to take a place of literature. It was composed by a common people. Like if somebody is going to picnic, how they prepare, everything was there. What they eat, how they eat, what was the system of eating, what were the things they eat, like chawadiya, which they, chewing type of some things, chosya, sucking type of some fruits, avleha, chutney types of licking some types of those things, sweets and savory, peya, leya. At the end of the meal, they used to give milk with dry fruit milk, mouth fresheners. Everything was, mentioned in the these folklore literature. So Prakrit literature is also now endowed with ornate and stylistic poetic tales and prose romances like Setubandha, Gaudavaho, Kulayamala, Leelavai, Samarai Chikaha, etc., etc. So, which have influenced some branches of modern Indian literature, also including the Kannada literature. Some of them give realistic pen pictures of the social and cultural life of medieval India. But the Dhurtakyan of Haribhadra Acharya is a unique satire in Indian literature. It takes a critical view of the Hindu Puranic legends. So after this all, now lastly that is dramatic literature. We have half a dozen purely Prakrit dramas which are called Sattakas. The most famous Sattaka is Karpura Manjari, earliest available, composed by Rajshekhar Suri. Rajshekhar, he's a poet. The term Sattaka, it is a Dravidian element. In Kannada we say Ata. So Ata means to play. Ata means to play. Or we say Bayalata. So it means to play. Suggesting thereby that the Sattaka had a popular origin. Leaving aside the Sattakas, almost every Sanskrit drama has its Prakrit portions. Like some characters speak in Prakrits in its various dialects. As per the situation and the character of that, drama. If some character belongs to some part of India, then he'll speak in that dialect. Like, the famous Bhartrahari has, mentioned mainly seven types of Prakrits. That is Magadhi, Prakhya, Avantija, Shauraseni, then Ardhamagdi, Bahelika, and then another one is Dakshinatya. So the most of the Sanskrit dramas we are talking about, the early dramas of like Ashwaghosha, Bhasa, Shudraka, Kalidasa, etc. So are bound to present the linguistic picture of the contemporary society, whereas the later one used the Prakrit dialects conventionally. In the Mritchakatikam and the Vikramorvashiyam, the number of Prakrit speaking characters is greater than that of the Sanskrit speaking ones. So scholars hold that Prakrit portions of the early Sanskrit dramas contain valuable linguistic heritage of India. So nowadays also, if anywhere, if we see a drama, then what happens if a elite person, meaning if a techie guy comes on the stage of a drama, so how he'll speak? He'll speak in English. It is quite natural. And if a techie guy comes on the stage and if he starts, speaking in a very dialect, so it seems very unnatural. Or if a small innocent child, a kid, is discussing something with her mother, with his mother, so how, in what language he'll speak? So that will not be a refined language. So that is how dramas were composed. Okay. So if we sum up this all, Prakrit literature contains a wonderful linguistic, literary and spiritual heritage that has considerably influenced the modern Indian languages and literature. It records the noble thoughts and messages of, the great Ashoka, one of the greatest monarchs of the world. And if you see the canonical section of the Prakrit literature, it presents some brilliant chapters in the history of human thoughts. They may be said to be ahimsa, anekantavad, non-possessiveness, aparigraha, the ideal code of conducts of layman, that is grahastha dharma. So it has preserved and propagated such a lofty spiritual and ethical ideologies that have helped to nourish among the masses higher values of life and to set for them healthy moral standards. The society depicted in the Prakrit literature, particularly in its narrative literature and lyric zones, is more popular and realistic than aristocratic and artificial. So it embodies a mine of information and data that can take us towards more or less a complete religious social and political picture of India of the period that could contribute its worthy might to the civilization of the culture of India. Prakrit literature provides rare and significant details and a good knowledge or our past culture. We should remember helps us to evaluate our present and plan the future. So something I have just given a brief introduction of Prakrit language and the literature of Prakrit languages. So now, as I said, we will take some questions and we can sum up the session.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Abhijeet. There are quite a few questions that I have, and some questions are coming from the viewers. So we'll mix them up and present it. Now, so initially you talked about the history of the language, relationship between Vedic, Sanskrit, and across various Prakrits. Now, leaving some of the controversies, we know, as you clearly identified, the first documented language in the Bharatvarsha Indian subcontinent is some version of different versions of Prakrits, starting with Ashokan edicts.
Yes.
We don't have anything prior to that. But you also mentioned that Buddha and Mahavira would have most likely spoken in one of the Prakrits. What is the evidence presented in the Buddhist and the Jaina works that they spoke in some specific language? Where it is mentioned in the historical documents that come, that Mahavira spoke in this particular language.
See, the reason behind of this thought process is, see, first of all, if we talk about the evidence, then we can go to the Hathi Gumfa inscription of Kharvela.
Right.
It starts from Namo Arahantanam, Namo Siddhanam. It starts from there.
Right.
So that is the hymn of Jainism.
Right.
And it is in Prakrit. And the inscription itself mentions a lot of things. And one of that is the King Kharvela has, made an effort to collect the language which was there in the monkhood, which was coming from the tradition of Mahavira. So that the same thing happens with the Buddha also. But we don't have the particular evidence in terms of Buddhism, but the same thing happens with the Buddhism. Like after the Buddha preached a lot of principles, later on the disciples have wanted to collect all the preachings of Buddha, then they have collected it. But why it is in Prakrits? Is there any evidences? Then we are coming to the Kharvela inscriptions, that he has made an effort to collect the knowledge available in the oral form in the monkhood of Jainism. Okay. And some of the words been written there in the inscriptions. Those words also there in Prakrit, and they are still available in the scriptures of Jainism. So we can, that is how we can, compare, and then we can see that those principles cannot be changed in any either form. So main principles were there in Prakrit, but see, it is very interesting to know that the Jainism or the Jaina monkhood or whoever has anything composed in Jainism, has never taken the, any side of any language. That Prakrit is the language of Jainism or the Kannada is the language of Jainism. No. Wherever the monkhood, Jaina monkhood travels entire India, and wherever they go and they settle for some while, they have composed their thoughts in that particular language. Like we know the history of migration of 12,000 monks from North India to South India. So migrated, and they have been, there in Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Andhra, and, Kerala, all these coastal areas also. And they have composed in, their regional languages. But the principles were there in Prakrit only. Like you see, we see the scriptures from 1st century AD. So mainly they all been composed in South India and not in North India. So if you take the scriptures which were composed in 1st century, those all are in Prakrit, and that too in Shaurseni Prakrit. That is never belonged to South India. Shaurseni belonged to North India. That is, see the Shursena Janpad. That Sursena Janpad is belong to Agra, Delhi, Mathura. This is the region of Shursena Janpad, we call it.
Okay.
And the monkhood have settled in South India, here in Karnataka, the boundary of Tamil Nadu, and here they have settled and they have composed it in Shaurseni Prakrit. And not in the time when they have came, because we can say that no, they have migrated from North India and they only known language was Shaurseni, and that is why they have composed. No, after migration, at least 300 years, they have composed it. And later on, we have, we can see the impressions of that Shaurseni in Kannada, in Tamil. We can see the impressions of that Shaurseni.
Okay.
So that is how we can, connect the language of Buddha and Mahavira. That is, and see, most importantly, if we see the history of India, so unfortunately there were two main categories. That is the elite people, and one is the common people, common man. And common man has, not able to learn the elite language. It was not possible at all. There was no entry to common man. So, but the preachings of Buddha and Mahavira, if you see, that all was dedicated to common people, common man. It was never meant for elite people. So that is how, and actually the language of Buddha and Mahavira was not the same which is available right now. We don't know the exact form of that Prakrit language. We just name it as Ardhamagadi. But what was the form of Ardhamagadi? Nobody knows it. Nobody knows it. If the Shvetambara Agama been composed in Ardhamagadi language, but that Ardhamagadi is totally different than the Ardhamagadi which is, used by Buddha or Mahavira.
Okay.
Maybe there are some changes.
That was my primary question. As in, they must have spoken a certain version of the language.
Exactly.
But we don't know. We don't know that.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but one thing is that in case of Buddhism, the Pali canons are preserved. And though they are well after Buddha himself, there is a continuous tradition, and for a long time they were preserved. They were then they moved to Sri Lanka, and then it was preserved in Sri Lanka, right? And then a set of holy texts are emerging in Buddhism, at least, quickly moves to Sanskrit. So it's not that they abandon one, but we see that both in the Gandhara region as well as in the mainland India, if you could call it, rather than the edges, there is a quick usage of Sanskrit. Now, in Jainism, how does that work? What were the early religious documents? Which version of Prakrit was it originally in? And then how does it evolve? At what point Sanskrit starts coming in the creation of the religious text particularly?
So, yeah, that's a good question actually. From the beginning, the canons were in are the Shaurseni Prakrit.
Okay.
But still, scholars have categorized Shaurseni into two. Like one is the Jaina Shaurseni and another one is Nataka Shaurseni, that is dramatical language. That
Okay.
is Shaurseni. It is very nearer to Maharashtri, the Nataka Shaurseni. But the Jaina Shaurseni is very ancient. But if you see the formation of Jaina Shaurseni, which is used in the Digambara scriptures, that is very nearer to Sanskrit. The what we call Sanskrit Nishta uses of words like Dhamma, Dharma, Karma, Kamma. So very, very nearer to Sanskrit. Because it may be possible that at the time of, because you see the earlier scriptures like that, one is Shatkhandagama, Kashaya Pahoda, those are the two scriptures where we see that it is not the same case. But after the scriptures, after the 1st century, maybe 2 to 3rd century AD, those scriptures, the language they have used is very near to Sanskrit. And after that, maybe in 3rd century only, the Prakrit composition also started in Jainism.
Okay. Okay. There is a question from Ms. Bona Ganesh, which is, what are the common factors between Zoroastrian, Prakrit and Sanskrit?
Zoroastri. Yeah.
The Indo-Iranian language.
So we cannot say the Indo-Iranian, but common factors between the Sanskrit and Prakrit, if we see, then we have to see the Vedic Sanskrit. I told you that Panini has not mentioned the word Sanskrit.
Right.
He has mentioned the name of Chandas, neither the Prakrit. So we can take the Chandas as the basic language. That was the spoken language before maybe Vedas been composed. So Chandas was there, and then this is the common phenomena that language flows. So from the Chandas, Panini has made a refined language. Maybe it was necessary to compose something, because if you see any dialect, any spoken language, there are a lot of possibilities, lot of meanings can be taken of one word. Or if you speak in a particular way, that can mean something else, and if you can speak in a different way, that mean something else. So there is very possibility of confusion, and that is why it may be possible that they have created a artificial language to write something. But at the time of creating that language, still there are many things which they have adopted from the spoken language. So if you see the Prakrits and the Vedic Sanskrit, lot of similarities are there in terms of sentence construction, in terms of wordings used. As it is wordings, you can see like Ajya, Arya. So the same thing is there in Prakrit, like Ajya is Ajya. Then in classical Sanskrit, it happens to be Arya, Kamma. So, words in terms of if you compare the words used in the Vedas and in Prakrits and the sentence construction formation, there is very similarity. Even the Vibhakti Prayog, like, Shashti Vibhakti and Chaturthi Vibhakti. So it is the same because Prakrit has no any difference between Chaturthi and Shashti. So the same thing is there in the Vedas. So in terms of that, we can see the similarities.
Okay. There is a question from Vyom Shah, where he says, you mentioned that earliest Prakrit inscriptions date from the times of Ashoka. Are there inscriptions in other Indo-European or Indo-Aryan languages where the influence of Prakrit language is evident? Maybe, outside or in the border regions or outside the regions of India.
Yeah, actually, we need to see the Nia Prakrit that is found in the border of, China. So in Nia Prakrit, I'm not able to remember the exact name. So that may be one thing where we can, see the impression of Prakrit, but directly we don't find any document which is earlier 300 BC. But the influence that, it is a matter of study because, as I said, there is a very little, research happened in terms of Prakrit language and literature. So we cannot exactly say that, yes, there is an impression outside India where we can see the some parts of Prakrit languages is there. So no, till today we don't see anything, we don't found anything. So it is a matter of research now.
Okay. Ramki has two questions. One is Prakrit forms, in what way we can differentiate all these based on profession or geography or religion? No, you talk about multiple, Sauraseni, Ardhamagadi, Pali, Abhapramsa, or various names, Maharashtri, Paishashi. How do you differentiate these?
Perfectly, it is purely on geographical basis.
Okay.
Yeah, it is perfectly geographical basis because what happens when a dialect or the language creates, it is because of the culture and basically environment, the climate from that particular region. If we pronounce anything, the climate has to help you to pronounce that particular word. So in that way, there is a little differences in terms of pronunciation. And when you pronounce a word in a larger years and years, that becomes a different word. Now that is how we differentiate between the Prakrits. If you see the basics are same. The rules are same. The sentence construction is same. Everything is same. Then what is difference? The difference is to pronounce a word. How you pronounce it. See, there is an interesting character in the Sanskrit dramas called Shakari. So Shakari means not vegetarian. Sha means the Sha letter. So Shakari, the character who pronounces Sh in every word. So he is Shakari. So it is only because that climate is like that. If you go in the Kashmir region, so where people say Paishachi. So Pishacha Nam Bhasha Paishachi. So Pishacha, that doesn't mean that they were the cruel personalities or something.
Right.
But it may be possible that at that time, where technology was not there, transportation was not there. So people were able to live in a place where, it was, minus temperature and people were able to survive over there. So maybe they were living in a cave or something like that. So the other people call them as Pishach. But if you see their language, they will not open their mouth so big like we people, because it is a climate condition. So that is how, we will differentiate the types of Prakrit languages.
There's one interesting fact which I wanted to ask you. Now, Prakrit, Prakrit languages were spread most of or almost all of North India. And from geographically, we see that it was spoken in Maharashtrian region as we are coming towards south. And with the movement of Jaina monks and Buddhists, we see that it had great presence in Karnataka. And also certainly in Andhra up to a certain point. But it didn't really make a mark in the Tamilagam region, or Tamil Nadu and Kerala. We don't see the presence of our works having been created as much in that. And instead we see that Tamil is the contemporary language of that time. From Sangam works onwards, we do have documented presence of Tamil. And even in the 3rd century BCE inscriptions, you have Prakrit inscriptions across India, but in Tamil Nadu or the Tamil region, let's say, including of Kerala, you have the Tamil inscriptions. The language is Tamil, the script being Brahmi right through. So much so that the early scholars of the 20th century, when they were trying to interpret the Tamil Brahmi, they were trying to read Prakrit into that. They didn't really think that it was even possible that it could have been written in Tamil.
Yeah.
And they couldn't make sense of it until later they figured out, hey, it's not Prakrit, it is actually Tamil.
Yes.
To interpret that. Oh,
yeah.
How did that happen? That Prakrit didn't really, there is sort of like a border. Prakrit sort of stopped around that Karnataka, Andhra border. Any theories that are talked about?
No, theories are there. The first theory is like, from the beginning, Tamil Janapada was very, democratic. And it never was under any that type of impressions from the outside. If you see the Tamil region, there are a lot of monuments found belongs to Jainism.
Right.
But we don't find any inscriptions in Prakrit.
Right.
But we find monuments.
Right.
So, and also there is some theory that the Tiruvalluvar is a Jaina monk. There is a theory. There are a lot of other reasons for that. Like Tirukural was written by the so-called Kundakunda Acharya.
Right.
Jaina monk. So as I said, Jaina monks never ever imposed any languages, or they have never taken a side of any language. That this is the language of Jainism, and we have to preach people in this particular language. So that was not the case. So as easy as possible, they have composed whatever the language was easiest to understand, make people understand. But in the medieval India, what happened? There was a scenario of Shastrartha and all. There was a discussion who is right, who is wrong. That all was happening at that time. So then there was a necessary to write something in Sanskrit to reach larger elite audience and make our point. But in earlier time, maybe in BC, it is not the same case, and it is not. You cannot make any theory that Jaina monks have written in Prakrit language that has been already ruined out. But it was written in Tamil also. No, it is not the case. It is all possible that if anything been written belongs to Jainism, that may be in Tamil only.
Mm.
That maybe in Tamil, like Tiruvalluvar has written. So they have accepted
I
the
mean,
regional languages.
subsequently, you do have works in Tamil in extolling both. It's sort of the 5th century onwards. We see a lot of these kavyas, right? Where Manimekalai,
Manimekalai.
Sivappaligaram, I don't know if I can put it as a religious text, but Manimekalai is,
Manimekalai is
Nilakesi is. So they are, you're talking about both the Jaina and the Buddha literature written in Tamil, in the Tamil tradition, but are presenting the views of the Jainism and Buddhism rolled into a storytelling kind of a format, right? With all the the keywords, the linguist, the particular religious concepts presented in the naturalized Tamil word to the extent possible, but also some of the Prakrit / Sanskrit concepts are also there in the words modified. On that,
But one thing I'll mention here, that the monuments which exist in Tamil Nadu, so we find some manuscripts there.
okay,
We don't know belongs to which century.
okay,
Like Kundukunda Acharya, he belongs to 2nd century maybe.
okay,
So he has composed some 84 scriptures, and it is found in Tamil Nadu also.
Hmm.
So we don't know it is been written in Tamil Nadu only, or later on it is migrated from Karnataka to Tamil Nadu. We don't know exactly. But we find manuscripts there. But it was composed there in Tamil Nadu, we cannot say, because we do not have any proofs like
correct,
the monk has lived over there or not.
right.
But precisely, there is a place called Pannur Malai. It is near to, I hope, Krishna, which district it is there? Near to, I am not remembering exactly.
Okay.
But Pannur Malai is the place there in Tamil Nadu.
Okay.
So this monk called Kundukunda Acharya, also there is a theory that he is the one who is Tiruvalluvar.
Right, right.
Has lived there in Pannur Malai.
Okay.
So it is mentioned.
Tiruvannamalai district.
Yeah, Tiruvannamalai district, correct.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So the couple of follow-up questions. One from Ramki, where he wants to know about the Karpura Manjari. Where can we get more details on Karpura Manjari, especially on its Dravidian connections? I will also add the other question. You mentioned that Prakrits had an impact on Kannada. How? In what way? So can you just take both these together?
Yeah, see, firstly, the Karpura Manjari. Karpura Manjari is the first form where the entire drama is been written in Prakrits. It is the first Rajshekhar has composed this Karpura Manjari Satak. So like earlier, like if we take the example of Shakuntala, Abhinyan Shakuntala and all, then as per the need, they use different types of Prakrits, and then they come to Sanskrit. But here what happened, the Rajshekhar has changed. The entire drama is been written in Prakrits. So the allied people also speak in Prakrit.
Okay.
So that is the basic concept of Satak, briefly. If you want to know more about it, you need to see some research happened in Gujarat University about it, about Karpura Manjari. And one book has been written in Hindi, that is from Sukhadia University, Udaipur. So that is about Karpura Manjari. Some research has taken place over there. Okay. So you can see their writings, and you can find some more knowledge from there.
Okay.
Speaking about the impressions of Prakrit on Kannada language, while you see mainly the words, how words, do their journey. So in terms of words journey, many words are very similar. Kannada words are very similar to Prakrit language. It may be possible, it is my theory, that the Kannada literature is founded from the Jaina people, Jaina poets. They have, firstly written something in Kannada. And that all belongs to the Jainism, and whatever, like Pampa has written Adi Puran.
Right.
So Adi Puranas, whatever the story is there, he has borrowed from Prakrit literature. That is Paumacharyam. And later on, the Sanskrit, that is Padma Puran. So the story is same, just that he has composed it in Kannada language.
Okay.
It may be the reason that many words have been borrowed from the tradition, from the Jaina tradition, and then he has, put into his literature, and later on those words been, automatically came into the folklore, and then, the modern, the Adhunik, the modern Kannada language been, created. So that may be the reason that we see a lot of words very similar to Prakrit language, and even to Sanskrit language, some extent.
Okay. Yeah. There is a question which is sort of related to what I asked by Srinivas Reddy. Could you comment on the relationship between Prakrit poetry and Tamil Sangam literature?
No, I actually don't have much more knowledge about Sangam literature.
Okay.
So I will not comment anything on it.
Sure. There is a question from Bharat where he wants to know are there any Prakrit literature composed in South India during the Sangam era, and the earliest Prakrit literature composed in South India?
What is the date of Sangam literature?
Sangam era is generally considered to be in the 2nd century BCE to 2nd century CE as a sort of rough marker. So sort of comparable in South India, but in Prakrit. You did mention about something, the Jaina literature written in Sauraseni in South India. Maybe
you see the early, all the canonical literature is composed in Karnataka, in the Karnataka region, that is South India. That is the thing. So the all, like 1st century, 2nd century, and 3rd century. These 3 centuries, monks were lived here in South India. There was a famine in North India. So Shvetambara monks may be believed that they lived over there, and the Digambara monks migrated to South India.
Okay.
And they didn't back to North India then. So after 3rd century, the Shvetambara literature was also, they started composing in a different form. Earlier, though, it was there, but in a different form, they were again composing it. So 1st century, 2nd century, 3rd century, like that is Shatkhandagama. Maybe it is, people say it is composed in Ankleshwar, Junagadh, near to Gujarat. And afterwards, the literature of Kunda Kunda. Just I told you that who lived in Ponnur Malai. Also, he has, taken his last breath there in Kundadri, near Shumoga district of Karnataka.
Okay.
So he has, lived the entire area of Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, and the Andhra region. He supposed to be brought up in Guntakal area of Andhra Pradesh. So he has written 84 scriptures.
Okay.
That all in 2nd century. That is in Shorseni Prakrit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the next is the literature part of So we know about the religious significance of Prakrit languages, particularly for the Jaina and the Buddha religions. How the uh, literary tradition, there is non-religious story and poetry tradition, where you did make a point that the love poetry, for example, is not sort of natural to the Sanskrit tradition, which you see in Prakrit. Interestingly, Sangam literature, Tamil, has that as one of its major tradition, the Akam poetries, which are love poems. In terms of this very idea of the Mahakavya, right? We have Ramayana and Mahabharata in the classical Sanskrit tradition. So, what is that kind of the biggest work in terms of the Prakrit literary tradition, which stands with that? You did talk about Brihat Katha, but unfortunately we don't have that available. But what is the earliest available extant that is available today in that literary tradition that we can talk about?
Yeah, that I mentioned, that is, Gaudavaho is there.
Okay.
That is the Mahakavya. Setu Bandha is there.
What period are we talking about?
We are talking about 6th century.
C.
C.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So maybe, Leela Vai Kaha is there. That may be 2nd to 3rd century. Leela Vai Kaha. That is a great work, in terms of epics, Mahakavyas in the Prakrit.
Okay.
Then Setu Bandha is there. Setu Bandha is the story of the same Ramayana. That is the construction of bridge, Setu Bandha. So that is the story. That's a great epic in there in Prakrit. So there are epics in Prakrits.
And also the Satasai that you mentioned. What is its period and that very tradition itself? Would you like to talk a little bit about this?
Yeah. Satsai has a great tradition actually. In the starting only, the king Hala has maybe collected these gathas. So these verses, in the first verse only, it is said that there were close together, verses were there in the folklore.
Okay.
And then we have just, collected some 700 verses from the folklore.
Okay.
Which I have, liked it. The King Hala said that he has liked some 700. Satta Sahi means Sapta Shati. It is 700. Right. So he has just taken 7. He has not composed it. Okay. He has just taken from the folklore.
Okay.
And the Hala belongs to 1st century. See. So the folklore may be very, long ago, it was the tradition to, create some, songs in the folklore, and people used to, gather and sing it, tell it, maybe some interesting facts about their culture, interesting things like, Satsai has lot of things, we can understand in terms of culture. A trader is going to, somewhere to, have business, and he's leaving his home back, alone. The, wife is living alone, and he has to secure her, children. So how she was, leading her life, and then how a businessman travels, what he takes with him, and how he comes back. What type of wealth he earns and, comes back. What was the value of it? And what he takes when he was traveling, what type of foods? Because maybe he is going to a region where his food is not available.
Right.
So he has to carry his own food, and it must not spoil. So how it will be prepared, how he carries it, so that types of very interesting natural facts are there in Satsai. So
Okay.
Satsai tradition we see after first century in most of the languages of India, there is a tradition of Satsai. Even in the Apabhransha, even in the Kannada, even in the Hindi, Khadi Boli, Vrajbhasha, even in the Gujarati, Satsai tradition is everywhere. And the first ever, book we find, that is Hal as Gaha Satsai.
Okay. Now you talked about, you mentioned a few other languages, Abhijeet and Kadiboli. This evolution of Hindi, how can we present it as, what are the languages that sort of flowed in to create this modern language of Hindi? Can you say something about that?
Yeah, obviously. See, main thing is that is Apabhramsha.
Okay.
As I earlier just said, told you, like there is a continuous journey of languages. And after when Prakrit has taken a literary form, it is totally become like a Sanskrit.
Okay.
It is still now.
Okay.
It is not developing now. So the
Right.
same thing, if you see the canonical literature of Jainism, you will see no differences.
Okay.
The same word been using in all the scriptures.
Okay.
There are no changes.
Okay.
But whereas if you see the general literature, which is composed in Prakrits, and it is, changing decades by decade, then it has took the form of Apabhramsha.
Okay.
Because when the dialect has taken the form of refined language, the literary language, then the same spoken language will flow. It will take another form.
Okay.
And then it has taken the form of Apabhramsha.
Okay.
When Apabhramsha has taken the literary form, again it has to flow.
Right. Right.
So if you see the earlier Khadi Boli or the Vrajbhasha or the Dhundari that is there in Rajasthan,
Okay.
or if you see Sindhi, those all the languages, if you see, entirely it is, impressed by the Prakrits.
Okay.
The dialects of their region.
Okay.
We must not forget it that Hindi is refined laterly. But Hindi was not in the form earlier like it is today. It is a literary language nowadays. But earlier when Hindi was there, it was the mixture of all the dialects nearby. If we see the Delhi as the Madhya Bharat, earlier Magadha was the capital of India. Nowadays, if you see the Delhi as the middle part of India, then the surrounding dialects of Prakrits impress the language, and then administrative language been created by the kingdoms. So then the same administrative language has again developed into literary language. That is called Hindi. But earlier compositions, if you see, like, after Apabhramsha, if you see the composition of Bihari Satsai, or the Kabir Das, Tulsi Das, or if you see the Dhundari language, then you see most of the words are same that were being used in Apabhramsha. And if you want to see the source of that word used in Apabhramsha, then you need to come to Prakrits.
Okay.
So that is the connection.
So you can in a sense say that creation of Hindi has been through interaction between Prakrits and Sanskrit, which have resulted in multiple subsequent languages, including, Kadiboli and Abhijeet and so on, which has subsequently mixed together, combined together, and the modern Hindustani and with Persian has also given that was the language of power for quite some time. So all of them have flown in. And then, of course, every time the governments have come in and tried to impose some views on that. Like, for example, now there is a lot of Sanskritization if you could call it, could be as well be even Prakritization, like removal of Persian and Urdu words and replacing that with some of the other words of the native variety, in a sense. These are all governmental interventions, in a sense.
CSIR has got a project now.
Right.
That,
Okay, great. Just one final question. This outside of literature, outside of religion, Prakrit was also used to a certain extent in the mathematics and primarily in math in certain cases, particularly because there were a lot of Jaina mathematicians, and I've heard about Jaina texts on, let's say, science and technology, in a sense. I'm not sure, however, whether there were texts on fine arts or dance or Shilpa texts, etc., which seem to be predominantly in Sanskrit. But what were the technical treatises that have come in Prakrits? Can you say a few words about that?
Exactly. See, if you see the architectural point of view of Jainism, then we find some books like Pratishtha, Sar, Sangra and all. Some of those were written in Sanskrit and some of those been written in Prakrits.
Okay.
But those about the architectural points of Jainism, that how to build a temple, what were the parts and all, that is basic structures.
The Vastu Shastra, temple architecture.
Okay. Temple architecture is there.
Okay.
And then if you come basically mathematics, then there is an Acharya called Sridhara. He has, basically written on mathematics. And then Mahaveera Acharya, there is another Acharya who has written Ganita Sara Sangraha.
But Ganita Sara Sangraha, the version that I have seen, is in Sanskrit.
But it belongs to Jainism.
No, that's correct. But
that tradition,
No, I want to know whether any commentary is written in Prakrit for it, or even the very original text itself in Prakrit.
No. See, there was an interesting study going on nowadays because there is none other independent text is available in terms of mathematics in Prakrits. But whatever the scriptures been composed, those have a lot of aspects of these all things. See, the Shatkhandagama and Kashaya Pohad has lot of things to say in terms of mathematics and science. But differently, we have to make a research, and then we have to take those aspects from that scriptures. Because see, canons, the main motive of composing canons was liberation. That's all. So they have not given much more importance for the worldly life or the worldly literature. They've been not concentrated. So, but meanwhile, when they were describing, when they were narrating, stories and all, then automatically, naturally, they have written some of the aspects of these, in terms of mathematics and science and technology. So in that way, we can, find some sources. But in Sanskrit, yes, we do have that belongs to Jainism only, but it is in Sanskrit.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Abhijeet. This is a huge area. There are, of course, questions. Typically, I've skipped a few questions where they were asking about which came first, Prakrit or Sanskrit, which is a usual questions that the answer is not that simple. I mean, there are many languages coexisted, and it is very difficult to pinpoint Then there was another question which talked about, which asked, what was the language spoken during Mahabharata times, which are again, historic. Is Mahabharata a historic event, or
Or a
how?
mythology.
Yeah, where do you put it, and who went and looked at what was spoken there? When we don't have evidence about even historic figures like Mahavira and Buddha, in terms of exact form they spoke. They must have spoken some language and which has evolved.
Exactly.
We have no document. That's the problem of not finding a recording. But some of them are beyond a point, speculations, extensions, etc. So I didn't even bring them to you. But this sort of opened up a lot of interesting views, and hopefully, some of us who have listened to this talk will go and further look for research papers and books to learn more about this. And that's the purpose of bringing such talks. Thank you. And
Right.
we had scheduled this talk earlier, and because of your illness, we couldn't have it then. I'm really happy that we could have it now after a few months of gap. Thank you once again from Tamil Heritage Trust for a wonderful evening where you have presented about Prakrits and its significance in the Indian religious and literary tradition. Thank you once again. And if you have any final comments to add, please go ahead. And with that, we will close.
No, thank you all from Tamil Heritage for giving the opportunity to share some of my thought process. Lastly, that Prakrit, Sanskrit, those all are the Indian languages, and the heritage of Indian literature and culture is there in both the languages. Whereas simply we need to understand that the folklore or the dialect cannot be developed. It is a natural process, whereas a refined language can be developed. So from Sanskrit, Prakrit can never be evolved, but from the earlier version of Prakrits, maybe not the same version what we know, but which Panini called as Chandas. So that is also kind of Prakrit, that is the people's language. So from the folklore language or from the dialect, a refined language can be developed, and it is developed. But from a refined language, we cannot develop a dialect. So that's the thing. I'm sorry that the earlier time I was unable to join, but this time we made it possible. I thank one and all. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Friends, we have an event coming up on 17th and 18th of this month, December, which is on Vijayanagara. The 2-day, there will be 10 lectures in all. And that's an in-person event, but live streaming will also be available wherever you are. Most of the talks will be in English. There's a possibility that 1 or 2 talks may at best be in Tamil, but it is predominantly in English. So please join us, and thank you once again from Tamil Heritage Trust.